Good afternoon, everyone. This is Catherine Cooper, and you're here for the Green Project Management webinar that we're very fortunate to have Rich Maltzman and Dave Shirley here with us to take us through this discussion. Before we do that, I just want to do a quick overview about the Sustainability Learning Center, and I'm just wanted to tell you a little bit about, just to remind you about the center, that we are a learning and networking hub for sustainability. We do provide professional development and skill certification. We're just launching our Green Team University program and we do a series of lunch and learns. We do have skill certification. We have 51 modules of e-learning on sustainability as well. And we have the Sustainability Learning Network, which at the end of this I'll tell you a little more how to get to it. But we will be putting a recording of this webinar as well as all of our other webinars, our lunch and learns, on there. So it's you go to the login on our website and it will take you to the Sustainability Learning Network. The purpose of this series is to really help green teams and their members with practical approaches and tools to advance sustainability. And so today we have about a 45-minute presentation, and after that we'll have some questions and answers, and hopefully maybe leave you with some things that you could even have a dialogue within your own green team. Hopefully some of you actually have green teams sitting around the table. And if you do have a green team with you, it would be great if you can, in the chat, just tell us how many people you have around the table, because we're always interested to know how many people we have participating in the session. So just to give you a little bit of familiarization with WebEx. So you have probably found the chat window. So please feel free, even during the presentation, to put questions in there, because when we stop for questions and answers, I'll bring those forward to Rich and Dave. And you see a participants list, and I think we've talked a little bit about how to mute your microphone. You may, during the presentation as well, if you have a burning question that you can't wait, put up your hand. So there's a raised hand flag there, and we'll stop and answer that question. And we'll also have a session at the end where we're going to address questions as well. So I think that will give you a bit of an overview of that. And so with that, I'd like to introduce you to Dave Shirley and Rich Maltzman. And they're both project management experts. They have been in this area for quite a while. Dave is a project management professional and has been an instructor and consultant for more than 30 years. And he teaches at Boston University project management and project management for IT, and he has a degree in geology and an MBA, and a distinguished member of the technical staff of AT&T and Lucent Technologies and Bell Laboratories for some time. And Rich Maltzman is also a project management professional, an engineer, and has been supervising project management activities and training since 1988. And he's been consulting and teaching at numerous colleges and universities, and has developed numerous training programs and certification programs. And he's a senior manager of learning and professional advancement at a global management program for global program management of a major telecom concern.
Thank you very much. It's great to have this opportunity to present to a group of folks who seem to be very concerned and focused on this very topic of project management and sustainability. Please excuse my minor speech impediment, also known as an American accent. So you may hear me say project when I really mean to say project, and organization when I mean organization. So hopefully we can get over that and understand each other. Let me go to the next slide, if I can. Why can't I advance? Here we go. So the agenda today is what are projects, because not all of you are project managers, cover basic introduction to project management. And importantly, I think we won't dwell a lot on that, the connection to sustainability. This is something where we think we have something. And for a couple of years now, 3 or even 4 years, we've been asserting that there is this connection. And why it's important, we'll cover today. We'll talk about green or sustainable project management and what you can do, you individually, as either a sustainability professional or a PM professional, to further the cause of sustainability in projects, not just for the Earth, which is, of course, important, but for the enterprise itself. We think both benefit when you do this. So a little background in projects. What are projects, and then more specifically, what's project management? And I thought I'd actually start this off with an interesting quote from today's Boston Globe. There's a feature story in today's Boston Globe about a brewery called Pretty Things, and their actual name is Pretty Things Beer and Ale Project. And there's a great quote in there today that's from the founder, Dan Paquette. And he says, usually you'd call yourself a company. We called ourselves a project. We thought that way, when we went out of business, we wouldn't look like a failure. And again, that's coming from today's Boston Globe, and it will help me define project management. So what are projects? Well, this is coming right from PMI.org's website, and I urge you, if you are interested in project management or want a refresher in what projects are, to go there. I'm going to cover really quickly the fact that a project is a temporary activity. It has a specific product, service, or result as an outcome. It's temporary. It's got a very defined beginning and end in time, and that's going to become very important later in our presentation. And it's unique. So by definition, project managers are change agents because they're doing something that has never been done before. Whatever its outcome is something unique. I've got the picture of the fork there. Here we're actually trying, maybe for artistic purposes, to design the fork that looks like that third one over from the left. It also requires that we work in teams that are kind of somewhat spastically put together from different silo organizations in a functional type of team. And so it requires organization skills and leadership for the project manager that's also quite unique. So what are projects a little bit further? There's some examples here. Developing software for a new business process, constructing a new bridge or building or repairing those, relief effort after natural disaster, expansion of sales into a new geographic market. All of these are projects and all require project management skills to try to get that delivery to be on time, within budget, and to improve the lot for the enterprise so that things go better in general in the future for that enterprise. So we've defined projects. What's project management? Well, project management is applying skills, knowledge, techniques, experience to execute these projects effectively and efficiently to get to the goals that the enterprise wants. Organizations see this increasingly as a strategic competency, and it's something that helps them get to their business goals. It's kind of the glue between the organization's overall mission, vision, to their daily operation. You'll see that in a moment illustrated. Some numbers. We did some digging to get the most recent numbers we could. This is a May 2012 update. We have 382,000 PMI members of the Project Management Institute, an international organization. There, I tried, with a huge number, approaching 500,000, 472,000, over 472,000 PMPs like Dave and myself. Dave and I have numbers in the tens of thousands on our certificate numbers because, well, we're old. So Dave, I think 1999, myself in 2000, received our PMP credentials. And as you can see, those are early relative to these 500,000 PMPs. And project managers use a combination of science, which, for example, you'll see a Gantt chart, which many of you are familiar with, or PERT charts and estimation techniques and earned value and risk management, all with what I call PM science, as well as an art. And because we're managing a disparate team of people across different organizations, maybe outside of your organization, obviously having also to deal with customers, there's quite a bit of art to this as well. So I've shown a conductor there to illustrate my view of a project manager's role. I don't know that we will really wear such an ugly purple jacket, but we are often conductors. So what are some of the defining aspects of projects that you, as a sustainable folks, a sustainable community, or community interested in sustainability, what are you interested in? Well, here's some of these attributes. They're unique, they're different, they're challenging, they're unlike the steady state, very much unlike the operations of a company. They require that we work between these silos, and they're collaborations of all different kinds of people. And I should mention, people who have different views of climate change and sustainability as well. So what's important about projects? And we use this image to try to get our point across. Projects are where the rubber hits the road. And what do we mean by the rubber hitting the road? And this, by the way, this slide is what gets project managers excited. They are the ones who bring things to reality. So to illustrate that, we use this image, which actually we have direct permission from Stanford University to use. It comes from IPS Stanford's Strategic Execution Framework, or SEF. When you look at this slide, what you see is the flow all the way from the very basic ideas, the Steve Jobs type ideas, vision, mission, long-range intention of the company, what they call ideation, all the way down to the bottom where you see operations. Okay, so you have a flow from, boy, I would like to build a company that does this, that provides this service, builds this product, takes care of this problem. And to get from that top part, the purpose or the ideation, down to the bottom part, there's a critical connecting point. That critical connecting point is, as highlighted here, portfolios of programs and projects. So when it comes to taking ideas and getting them to be real, or to make the rubber hit the road, it's really project management and to some extent portfolio management that does that. We are where the rubber hits the road, and project managers are the very specific people who need to get mission statements to become reality. And those mission statements, as you know, often include statements about sustainability. And go to any company's, major corporations' webpage, and you'll see probably pictures of trees and daisies, butterflies, and sunflowers and windmills talking about how they care about the planet. Well, does that really take effect in day-to-day operations? Not unless project managers have a say, because they're the ones who will actually execute. So one of the things we've recognized in our research is that project managers have always been green. Maybe they don't know it, but they've always been interested in reducing costs, think of controlling resources, increasing stakeholder value, getting more efficient, preventing waste, and protecting scarce resources. This is what we've done. And let me just comment at this point, I heard some pre-conversation before we got started. Project managers sometimes react negatively to the idea of sustainability because they say it's not our job. We have this start and finish type attitude. When we're done, we're done. We don't think about operations. So this slide shows a very simple 2x2 matrix. This is what consultants like to do, make 2x2 matrices. And there's a report here that we reference, and we've given you the detailed ways to find this. From 2011, a sustainability leadership report, which compares sustainability reality, what a company has actually done in terms of being sustainable, versus what people think about the company. So it compares sustainability reality with sustainability perception. And in this chart, that would yield in the upper right-hand corner those who not only really do things well, but get the message across, and people think that folks do, that company does things well, that organization does things in a sustainable way. And it's project managers that move companies both from left to right and from the bottom to the top. That is, in truly becoming sustainable in their operations, in their deploying of projects, and moves them hopefully to the point where people get it, that yes, HP, for example, is doing a great job in actually being sustainable. The next slide shows, I'll go through this rather quickly. The next slide shows some actual companies. I'll just highlight a few. In the upper right-hand corner, which is kind of where you want to be, that means you are actually behaving in a sustainable fashion according to this study, and people see you that way. You see companies like IBM, Merck, Nokia, AstraZeneca, and HP. Whereas here in this quadrant, you'll see companies like Google, Yahoo, and Apple, and Honda, which although they're perceived very well, they're below the mean in terms of actual measured performance and sustainability, at least according to this study. Our point here is it's project managers that move us from the lower left-hand or the southwest corner up to this leadership area where not only are you actually performing well, but your customers and other stakeholders see you as actually performing well. So with that, I'd like to dive into this intersection in particular. What does project management have to say? What do project managers say? What do projects have to do with sustainability? Well, we found this interesting report coming from the UK called Sustainability Interventions. It's a great resource. We've given you the information here as to how to get that. And we just want to touch on a couple of examples because it lines up so well with what we've been saying for years. First of all, where's the pressure coming from? You know, who's driving projects to become more sustainable? Well, they come from shareholders. They come from ratepayers in the case of electric utilities, taxpayers, voters, customers, governments, and so forth. So the drivers are really all over the place. And the report goes on to say that projects, even if they're not facing these pressures now, we'll see these in the next few cycles, quarters, years. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Okay? And since projects are about change in the first place, it applies to the environmental aspects of projects as well. And we'll say, and you'll see later, that projects projects do not have to be a windmill or a wind farm or a biofuel facility to be considered a green project. So I'll close out my section here with this. Here we have one of the 14 interventions in this report. There is just a bit of noise, so if someone could, if folks could mute, that would be great. Here's one of the 14 interventions, number 13, talks about projects in use. And to go back to my first point from the Stanford execution framework, it suggests that we think about operations or think about the road. Remember, there's the rubber and the road. Think about the road. Think about operations in the design and the execution of your project. Think about what happens to the product of the project in the steady state. And then also they bring up these lessons learned, and we have a section from our book called The 4 L's that reflects back on that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave, and Dave's going to take you through a little bit about our book, a little bit about what we call green project management. So Dave.
So Dave, you're unmuted, and you have
Yep,
control.
I'm unmuted, and I was just flipping through the rest of Rich's slide to get to mine, or our other slides. So what I'm going to talk about is what Rich and I are all about, and what the basis of our Green Project Management book was and is. So I'm going to start with our assertions, and we based the book on these 5 assertions, and I'll just give you the speed version of those. And the first part is, the first assertion says that doing the right thing helps the project team do things right. And when we think about the right thing, we think about sustainability and how to further that with our projects. And when you think about sustainability, you don't just think about the environment, but think about the triple bottom line, and that is people, planet, and profits. So those triple bottom line is all in that sustainability realm. And we've added the 4th, instead of the triple bottom line, we've added the quadruple bottom line, which includes projects. So it's people, planet, profits, and projects. The second assertion then is that Green PM, or Green Project Management, will help better equip your team to respond to project risks. And you can't respond to risks unless you've identified them in the beginning. And that's what we're saying about environmental risks per se. is that you need to identify those environmental risks, because if you don't, they certainly can come back to bite you. And in the past, those environmental risks have not been as thoroughly covered as they should have been. And we're saying that you should do that, and that will help you then to respond to project risks, because now environmental risks become part of the project risks. The third assertion then is that Green PM not only helps the project, but it also helps the product of the project. So when you think about the aspects of project management, you have your processes that you use to run your projects, and then you have some outcome from your project. So you want to think about both of those in terms of sustainability. How can I make my processes more sustainable? For instance, can we avoid having people travel to meetings? Can we do things via like a WebEx or Skype or any of those? Can we do that? That's much greener, much more sustainable. So there's a lot of things you can take into consideration in the process, as well as the product of your project. And we'll talk a little bit more about the product in a minute. The fourth assertion then is the looking through an environmental lens as part of your toolbox. We look through a lot of lenses as project management. Project managers. We look through the quality lens. We look through a communications lens. So why not use, as Winston and Esty, who wrote a terrific green business book called Green to Gold. That I'll have Rich, he can stick that in the chat while I'm speaking. That they mention a sustainability lens in there, or an environmental lens. So you look at your project through that environmental, considering the various environmental sustainability aspects of the project. And finally, the fifth one, greenality, like quality, must be planned and not bolted on. And I did say greenality, and I'm going to hold that word for a little bit, and I'll explain a little bit more about greenality. But just like quality, and as project managers, those of you who are project managers have seen that quality can no longer be inspected into a project, must be planned in the beginning in order to have good quality. So we also talk about one of the major aspects of the book, and one of our major aspects of projects is that there is a rainbow of green. So there's a bunch of different colors from a very dark green to a very light green as far as projects go, but all projects have some element of sustainability in them. And it doesn't have to be a wind farm or electric vehicle. Now we look at those as being a very dark green. And project success means that the customer of the project is made successful by the project's product in a steady state. So we're saying that we're looking beyond the initial project into the steady state of that product itself. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then adding environmental focus to your project increases the chances for that project success. We know that more and more people now are interested in sustainability. There's indices all over the place that cover different aspects of sustainability and company sustainability, including what companies you want to invest in, whether they are sustainable or not. So that the stakeholders now are starting to get much more active. So let me look a little bit more into, and I'm going to go into the rainbow green quickly also. But we assert that there's a spectrum, and that it goes from green by definition, those are those solar projects, to green in general. This is the spectrum itself. You see the wind farm on the left, and maybe a software release all the way to the right. And we're also saying now that it's easy to understand green by definition, those projects. So the focus on sustainability is there because it's a sustainable or green project. The focus on that green in general piece, which is maybe that software release, isn't as broad or as focused as we'd like it to be. So therefore, the role of the project manager needs to increase for those projects themselves. Your role as a project manager in that green by definition piece may not be as heavy because everybody understands it as green in general, which maybe very few understand. So we're going to look a little bit more in detail on this and fairly quickly. Green by definition, project impact, product impact, and green in general. That is the spectrum that we like. So green by definition, again, I talked pretty much about it's that construction of the wind farm or desert tech. And those of you who aren't familiar with desert tech, very interesting project. It's at www.deserttech.org. It's a not-for-profit or nonprofit. And their premise is that within 6 hours, the world's deserts receive more energy from the sun than mankind consumes in 1 year. So that's 6 hours versus 1 year. And this is a project that's led by about 50 experts, led by Dr. Nees. And it's an integrated approach that's going to look at the whole spectrum of sustainability, from security of the individuals in the area. A lot of these take place in areas that are very poor, have drinking water issues, have socioeconomic issues, and they're going to deal with all of that. That's why we're very interested in Desert Tech Project. It's an all-around project. But again, green by definition is fairly easy to understand. Green by project impact. If we look at one of our local here in the Boston area, the Big Dig, it certainly did have an impact in the area. And some of these can overlap green by definition, but this particular project, some of the facts around 3.8 million cubic yards of cement were used. That's a 3 feet by 4 inches thick, 3 feet wide by 4 inches thick sidewalk from New York to San Francisco. It would go 3 times. That's how much cement was used in that. There were 16 million cubic yards of dirt that was taken out of that, and that's enough to fill our Foxborough stadium where the Patriots football team plays 15 times to the rim. So that's huge impacts. So that's why we listed that project as a green by impact. And there's some others, drilling a new oil rig, big construction projects, including green buildings. So there you are. You can see that the Big Dig project was I'm sorry, I should have given you a little background, those of you who aren't familiar with it. What they did was they took a lot of the streets in Boston, the congestion, and put it underground. So they dug out a lot, but built tunnels, removed a lot of dirt, trying to alleviate some of the huge traffic jams. One of the major roads went right through the middle of Boston, north-south roads, and so they tried to remove some of that congestion, and that's what the Big Dig, that's why they call it the Big Dig. It took a lot of tunneling effort. And also they had to design machinery for it. A lot of this had never been done before. That's why it's such a unique project. Sorry, I should have given you a little background, those that don't know about the Big Dig. Green by product impact. The main focus of the project is not green, nor is it really environmentally oriented. But there's some steady state operation that does impact the environment. And I'll give you a real quick overview, and we have much more detail in the book. And you can, and also on our blog postings on our website about the single service coffee maker by Keurig. It was a great project, a very successful project. On time, it was the right time in the market. It was at a good price point, makes a great cup of coffee. The issue is with the K-cups. The K-cups are non-recyclable, and it is thought that, estimated that within the first 3 years of operation, 2009, 10, and 11, that there will be there were about 11 billion of these K-cups that were going directly into the landfills, and that was enough to circle the planet about 9 to 11 times, something like that. So they didn't think about, and we always give the caveat that we weren't in the room. We weren't in the room when they made these decisions, but they certainly didn't appear. And Green Mountain Coffee, who owns Keurig, is an extremely green company from the Green Mountain State, and fair traded coffee, those kind of things. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that they considered the steady state operation of, and that's where we're saying that we should consider that as project managers, that steady state, and that's a departure from our regular duties. And finally, you have green in general, which are projects that may not have any sort of green or sustainability elements to them that you can see, but we assert that they do have. And if you think about what interesting, one of our country western groups here in the United States, Big Kenny, Big and Rich, for a while they split up, and Big Kenny, who was part of Big and Rich, went off and did a CD. His CD now, when it was packaged, came as a sort of a cardboard, but yet it was totally recyclable, and it was also implanted with seeds, wildflower seeds. So what you did was, after you pulled the CD out of the case, you planted the case and grew wildflowers. So even with a software release, when you think about a software release, how are they going to do that? Are they going to do it over the internet? Are you going to be able to download, or do you have to buy a new disk for that? Are they going to, if they do supply a new disk, what kind of packaging do they have? So those are, a project that doesn't seem to be very sustainable certainly is. I said I was going to mention Greenality, and I will quickly. When we were thinking of we were trying to think of a word. I mean, there was a lot of greenness. There were a lot of those kind of things those kind of words that came up, and we just couldn't figure out the right word. So we know that so we took the qualities of green, which are sustainability and life cycle assessment model, which Rich will talk a little bit more about. And we took the best of quality, and project managers know a lot about quality and customer expectations. And all we did was mash those two together, and we came up with this word, Greenality. And that's where that word comes from. And there's a cost, just like there's a cost to quality, there's a cost of Greenality, and there's a cost of poor Greenality, and those are just like quality, internal failures, and waste and cleanup. And if you take the time to do appraisals or do prevention and training, and like some of these like these webinars, these are training. You get more aware of Greenality and of sustainability. You have better outcomes. And I'm not going to go into it. We go into it in the website, but the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. When we did research into that case, we found that there may have been some cost of good Greenality that was avoided, as a result, there was some cost of poor greenality, that failure $20 billion fund that was put aside. So again, we weren't in the room when they made some of these decisions, but from a lot of the things that we researched, we saw that this cost of greenality wasn't there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass the ball back to Rich, since I find him on the, there we go, and hand over the.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep, sure can.
Okay. So thanks, Dave. So just to keep the continuity there with BP and to tie it back to some of the earlier points about our assertions, of course, there's quite a bit of government investigation into that BP spill, and that resulted in things like their risk registers, and our project manager's ears should perk up. That's one of our favorite tools, risk registers. The risk register for the BP cont'd well included precisely 0 environmental and safety risks. That's shocking to me. I hope it's somewhat shocking to you. Lots of operational risks, lots of monetary risks. So even with BP at the ideation level, being focused on changing their logo to Beyond Petroleum and trying to become a green company, at the project manager level, it did not filter down, and those project managers, and again, we can give you the link to this PDF file. That's their actual risk register for that cont'd well. Has the template shows them, but the actual risk register does not fill in any risks for environmental or safety risks. So they had a cost of poor greenality there. If they had put the effort into researching those risks, it would have been a tremendous payoff. All right. So life cycle thinking. I'm going to try to accelerate so we have time to chat, because I think there's people here who would like to talk with us. Life cycle thinking, one of the inspirations for this, and I spent 2 years in the Netherlands, was, and I read this book while I was there. I don't know how many others have read this. It's called The Discovery of Heaven. Great book, great movie. Dutch film didn't get a lot of play in the U.S. or Canada. I don't know about Canada. But it's divided into 4 sections, and I love this logic. The beginning of the beginning, the end of the beginning of the end, and the end of the end. And as project managers, we are programmed to think of our projects in this way. We think of the project having a definitive beginning and end. We do not think about the long-term use of the product. We do not think about the K-cups, for example. We think about getting that coffee maker's design out and into manufacturing. So what you see here is we, in our brains, our project management community has this stop sign, and we want to change that stop sign to a stop light. Stop light has, it has a red light, but it also has a yellow and a green light. And we'd like to let you go through and think about the beginning of the end and the end of the end of your project. And that's what life cycle assessment is, and most of you know this, so I'm not going to dwell on it, but there's this idea that all the way from material extraction to when you're disposing of the product of your project at the end, it's a full-fledged cycle, cradle to cradle, and lots of books on this topic. But we like to think about it in terms of a project manager conceiving of this whole cycle, which we tend not to do. One example of that is the washing machine, and you'll see if you're a project manager for a new release of a LG washing machine, you think about the places in which there's impact to the earth, and almost all of it comes from use. So you can put a lot of work into packaging, and manufacturing, and even disposal of that washing machine. You haven't had that much impact. So project managers, if you think Pareto chart, here's your first item in terms of Pareto. You want to think about use. So if you can make, for example, a washing machine that does a great job in cold water, these numbers all come down in energy use, because you won't need to heat or use hot water for the operation. That's life cycle thinking. And there are plenty of tools available to help you in this. There's an LCA framework and LCA software. We were thrilled, absolutely thrilled, to have an EPA director, PhD, help us write chapters 9 and 10 of our book. And she co-wrote chapters on the LCA framework that help project managers understand this from our own perspective. I won't dwell on it. This is basically what an LCA framework looks like. I'm not going to read you all the detail. Most of you know this. A lot of it's based in ISO 14000, in particular the one that's referenced at the base here. There are plenty of companies, including one right down the street from me in Cambridge, Massachusetts, called Sustainable Minds, but there's plenty of others who produce software in this area that help you ask those what-if questions as you do product design and as you manage your project to see how various aspects of the design will affect the long-term outcome of the product of the project. So again, from our book, one of the things we assert is that there are these 4 L's, that if your project can be lean, you should be learning, it should be linked from operational deployment all the way back to the ideation, and lasting, this kind of long-term thinking. So I won't read you this slide, but I'll give you the intent of the 4 L's, which is to think in terms of efficiency, preserve knowledge, connection to both ideas of your company and the mission and vision, all the way through to operation, and long-term thinking. You do those things as a project manager, you have better projects, you have better project outcomes. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Dave quickly and hopefully not unexpectedly.
All right. Hopefully you got that, Dave.
Yeah,
I'm back.
Yep, thanks.
Am I back?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. Yeah. So making the connection to project management. This is what Marvin Odom, who's president of Shell Oil, had to say. And I'm not going to go read it to you, but it's I like the last point. At this point, sustainability may be the #1 driver of our innovation programs. And if you say and he further says you have to do this work up front. What I have to do as a company leader is push the education and the thinking of our project managers, our project developers in that direction. Now here is a company that's very much fossil fuel intense, that needs to be more sustainable and recognized as being more sustainable. What we've done is Rich and I, and we have a crowdsourced in our community section of Earth PM. We had some suggested changes to the 5th edition of the PMBOK, and I think that we may be looking more towards the 6th edition. I don't think that many of these are going to, whether it wasn't pushed enough, wasn't accepted enough. Anyway, we're a little disappointed, but you're welcome to look at on our community section of Earth PM to see what the proposal that we put on Earth PM. Something additional we're working on for about the past year and a half is putting together a nonprofit called ISIS PM. We want to, we've been working on it quite a while, and the reason for that is that we want to be very careful to make it our certification process, the ISIS PM itself. We want to, my slides are jumping around. ISIS itself, we want to make that very rigorous and very meaningful in the for anyone that's interested in sustainability and project management and sustainability. Right now, it's pretty much of a skeleton, and we're continuing to work on it. We've got a mission, and we should have it up and running fairly quickly at this point. So what can you do? We have 5 things here. First of all, as a project manager, accept the idea that you are a change agent. That's what we do. There we go. That's what we do. As project managers, we are. That's what projects are all about. They're all about change. So we are the change agents. Connect your organization with the environmental management plan. That was something we didn't talk too much about, but that is an additional plan in the project management world that would fit in, and that has your environmental and objectives, your project environmental objectives, and that should be connected back to the company's sustainability mission. Dare to think beyond the project, the delivery, and that's what Rich talked about with a life cycle assessment. We also think that you should drive backwards into the process. Also, make sure you're part of the decision-making process. Understand the concept of greenality, and then build your own green credibility, just like everybody that's on this call. That's what. Okay, looking beyond the traditional deliverables, lean thinking, the 4 L's as Rich in the life cycle assessment, and connecting with your production beyond. And as project managers, and we all know that when we look at our objectives and goals, they should be smart. And Rich and I are saying that it should be smarter, that the environmental responsibility should be included in those objectives. So that's about, sorry, we got a little bit fast at the end. We have a lot to say. We could probably do a 3-hour webinar here. So what we'd like to do now is to thank you for your sustained attention and open it up for any questions you might have.
That's terrific. Thank you very much, Rich and Dave. You guys, this is really an interesting topic. So I'm wondering if people want to raise their hand. So there's the hand raising button there, and then we'll unmute you, and then you can ask your question, because I think there were some really good questions that could come out of this. One that I'll ask while people get on the hand raising thing, or you can also type your questions into the chat, is where does social sustainability fall into this discussion? So I've got both of you unmuted. I'll let you decide how you want to talk about that.
When you say social sustainability, you mean the corporate social responsibility from a people perspective?
Yeah, so when we're thinking about, I think we've talked an awful lot today about almost environmental sustainability, in terms of, consideration of the filter being environmental. Where does the social piece come in?
I think, Rich, I think that when we think about the triple bottom line, which is planet, people, and profits, that's where the, and that needs to be considered always, is that triple bottom line. Which includes the people piece, and people are a scarce resource, and as project managers we manage scarce resources, and people are part of that.
Yeah, and I think, go ahead.
No, I agree. It's a matter of looking at holistically this triple bottom line, and we've had a lot of interactions with people like. I can't remember the name of it now, but folks who've really tried to work this back into the social media within a company to engage the individuals. And when we talk people, we have to think not only about the employees of the company, but the folks involved in the environment. So, for example, when Coca-Cola is drawing water from towns in India to produce beverages, what are they doing to the farm areas in that surrounding area, and are they giving back in terms of checking that watershed to make sure? So these are very interconnected, because that's environment and people. And again, it's just a matter of looking at this, holistically. Impact is not just on the earth, but the people who live here, and the people who are affected by the project, and then that's long-term operation of the project.
Terrific. Okay. Other questions that people might have, and if you're not able to unmute yourself, just maybe type it into the chat box. Andrew, when you first came on the line, you said you have a responsibility within your group with many project managers. I wondered if you had any questions that sort of came up through this presentation. And I don't know if you can. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Hi, Catherine. Not at this time. I think we're still digesting our lunch and the presentation.
And what's been your biggest challenge, Andrew, when you look at this question of putting this sort of green filter, or the idea of greenality what has been your biggest challenge? Just trying to get people to understand what sustainability is or green is.
I think that's typically can be one of the biggest challenges is the client's understanding of sustainability. And I think, I think that although most organizations are starting to see that there are numerous benefits to doing things sustainable, not all of them have jumped onto the bandwagon yet, so to speak. And so there's still those questions around, well, is this going to cost me more? There's still that perception that they're not taking a life cycle cost approach. They're looking at the project specifically, and that there's a budget associated and time associated with that. So I think the biggest challenge that we're facing is communicating to the client that this, in the long run, will save them time, and as the presenters showed, have a better outcome at the end. And so we're always looking for examples of that relate specifically to the project we're managing, to demonstrate real. I get that a lot. Show me the numbers. Show me the real data here to support your statements.
Right. I'm not supposed to have questions, but I have one anyway. For anyone who's who's kind of at this intersection, I won't pollute it by giving our opinion here, but or our findings. Have you seen pushback from project managers? Has the project management community reacted negatively when you tried to invoke sustainable thinking into their projects? Anyone have any examples? Yes or no?
And before you jump into that, Rich, I just wanted to answer that, to give another example to look at. Ray Anderson, if you go to the TED talks, Ray Anderson, who's now passed away, but he was a big proponent of sustainability and shows dollars. He can actually show you dollars. So if you go to the TED talks and just plug in Ray Anderson, you'll get a really nice talk on and they save $600 million on their bottom line from sustainability efforts. So it's that's one place where you can go to find to have that money argument.
Okay, I also have Jody who has a question here. So let's him hear from him, and then we'll go back to Rich's question.
Take your questions first. Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Catherine. It's great to hear from you. I had a question basically around risk, and just some of the complicating factors that happened when you're trying to, implement a lot of these sustainable initiatives. And just to give you an example, LED lighting. I'm currently working for Port Metro Vancouver, and I'm looking at LED lighting at some of our port facilities. So there's a lot of sustainability benefits, obviously, from implementing this lighting in terms of, the operational costs and energy efficiency. But there's also an issue about light spillage to the local community. So I find a lot of these initiatives, sometimes they're a lot more complicated in terms of the benefits and some of the drawbacks associated with it. Do you have any advice in terms of, trying to, push through some of these initiatives and take into account some of the risks and actually have it successful in terms of buy-in from the executive level?
Let me take a shot at that, Dave. So just like a wind farm has, there's this front page story on the Boston Globe today about a wind farm in Falmouth, Massachusetts, that's where there's two large turbines. One's being shut down because it makes too much noise for a neighborhood that's nearby. Obviously, tremendous benefit in having renewable wind energy for the local community, but then it tends to come with some drawbacks. So yeah, there's a cost-benefit analysis that has to be done, and those are tangible and intangible costs and benefits. In the case of the lighting, I don't know enough about this light spillage issue, but it's going to be, I'm making a motion of my hands, being a balance. You're going to have to look at the long-term reliability, the lower energy use, the lack of maintenance And then the only other thing I'd throw in there is look at other applications. I mean, many people are deploying lighting, LED lighting, in all kinds of applications. What has been done to prevent that? And kind of go to the best practices to try to mitigate that. But you have to look at that negative against all of those positives that go along with it. And again, it's difficult because not all of them are measurable in terms of money. So you raise a very good question. I would just point towards best practices and discovery from other projects.
Yeah, I think the brunt of it is that there, in terms of trying to try something new, there is pushback, and a lot of times those areas pushback is legitimate.
What's the alternative instead of LED? Back to fluorescent lighting?
Not fluorescent.
Incandescent.
It's sodium halide. I can't remember the name exactly.
Yeah, the orangey pinkish ones. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, if it helps you, there's a $54 million project now at the heels of another $10 million project in the Big Dig we talked about, which is the tunneling under Boston, in which they made the decision to go with fluorescent lighting, heavy fluorescent lighting, and much more energy intensive. Early on, they went to that. And now they're paying the price because they're falling, they're potentially killing people. They haven't yet. They have to uninstall and reinstall LED lighting. So that's in a tunnel. We don't have the spillage problem, but we had all kinds of problem with corrosion as well as energy use for the fluorescent light. So they made that decision later. So if you need an example of where someone went to chose the non-LED and then suffered the consequences, that's what happened in Boston. I'd be glad to send you. In fact, we blogged about that choice.
Okay.
That lighting choice.
And how, as a project manager, would you prepare stakeholders for the potential that an initiative might not be successful? That there might be
you're transparent. This is one of the principles. You're transparent about the costs and benefits, again, tangible and intangible, about the decisions you're making, and you link them. Both, this is really key, and I think this is something where we brought something new. You link them, you pay special attention to linking them both to ideation. In other words, if you've got mission statement that says this project will be environmentally, socially responsible, and operations in that this LED lighting will save X dollars over time, not think about just the budget for this project. By doing that, you put blinders on that have you make decisions like the Big Dig made, which they're now regretting.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
And not only they're regretting, speak about social responsibility, I personally will have lanes closed to me in those tunnels, and I'll be waiting, literally, it's going to cost me days of time in those tunnels because they're going to close lanes and reroute traffic, and there's a whole bunch of, if you talk about secondary, tertiary risks, there's a lot to be said for the benefits of this lighting, and I think find out what the spillage issue is about and see if you can find out how others have solved it.
Yeah.
Interested in knowing more about that, so if you want to communicate with us, I'm very interested to know what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there any other questions that people would like to bring forward at this time? Or maybe even talk a little bit to Rich's question earlier? All right, I don't think I'm seeing anybody coming forward. I will be following up with providing you with the presentation as well as the email for both Dave and Rich. So if you want to talk to them directly about any of this, or certainly check their website, that would be fantastic. So just to bring this then to a close, first of all, I want to thank Dave and Rich for coming out and talking to us. I mean, I think this is a fantastic book. I think everybody should have a copy of it. And we're going to follow your greenality concept further. I think you're really onto something there. So this is really good work. So thank you very much to the two of you. And as we go forward, I just wanted to let you know that we do have a Green Office Gap Assessment course coming up June 5th to the 26th. This is for green teams. And we do a lunch and learn once a week, every Thursday, between 12 and noon Eastern Standard Time, and go through a checklist. So that would help your green team focus in on some projects that they might want to do in order to green up your office facilities. We're also going through right now the process of this leadership course on what are the standard leadership attributes of successful sustainability facilitators. Even though we're partway through it, you can still join. We have all of the recordings, and it's a fabulous course. It's really wonderful. And then just to let you know what else is coming up, the next Lunch and Learn, though it's not technically at lunchtime, will be Alan Atkinson, who is going to share with us his ISIS tools for sustainability implementation, of which sustainability measures is a big part of. Alan's from the UK. He's been, well, he's from Europe actually, been working on sustainability for more than 20 years now. He's well known within the sustainability field, has worked with a lot of companies like Nike and Levi Strauss and communities and UN, and he's done a lot of great work. So that's happening on June 7th, and it's well worth the time that you can spend watching that or bringing your green team to that. And then for all those of you who want to see this recording later, you will find it on our website. So if you go to the Sustainability Learning Center website, and in the upper right-hand or lower left-hand sides of the page, you'll see Login. You'll go to this page, create a login, and under Webinars, you will find this and past webinars. So you can watch them time and time again. So I will be sending out a survey to people who have attended all of our Lunch and Learns to get some feedback on programs for the fall. So I look forward to your participation in that. And thank you very much for your attention today. It's been a real pleasure. And again, thank you so much to Rich and Dave. That was a fabulous presentation.
Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, super. Thank you.